And you know what I do want to see though is better subclasses from the Paladin. We've talked about this before, where the subclasses just don't feel good. And this is a time where you can lean into that and say, hey, this is the Holy Knight ideal. This is the oath of you have a horse. And then you can base the entire subclass around it.
Welcome to Monsters and Monster Class, your TTRPG fix. I'm Ellie.
I'm Jared Bornicle.
And I'm Will Milden.
And on this episode, we are taking a look at the new Paladin that came out in the One D&D UA. At this point, it's probably a little dated as we're just getting back from our multi-week break. Welcome back, everyone. That feels super forced because we record these two back-to-back. Just, I know I wouldn't have editing time, so they're being released on both sides of the break.
We missed you.
Hence why we are all dressed exactly the same with the exact same natural lighting going on. But to you, it's been weeks. To us, it's been 5 minutes.
Unless they're just, haven't, listened. Now they're like catching up. It's been 2 years.
Yeah, that's true.
There's just no reason to really assume anything here.
No,
Let's get into the Paladin.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about, as Ellie said, the Paladin UA. Lots of changes in here. We'll see if they're for better or for worse, and also talk about what we want to see out of the Paladin going forward here. Before we even get into what is in the UA, I guess I want to know if you all had any thoughts on what Paladins were missing and like what needed to be changed. I feel like they've been constantly regarded as one of the stronger classes and kind of fit their niche pretty well of being a melee big Nova damage dealer. So was there anything that you were looking for out of this?
Yes, I wanted them to be punished.
Okay.
Because the whiny babies who choose Paladin are the worst players in D&D. They always demand more. They wanted less restrictions on their overpowered abilities. I wonder if WotC gave them that.
Okay. Ellie, I saw you shaking your head. Go ahead.
I kind of agree with Will. Not that the people were whiny or anything like that, but I've always felt Paladins were really, really strong. Especially when it came to combat. I know anytime at a table there's a Paladin, at least what we've played with, combat always had to get really cranked up and extra health added to things, and it just felt a little too much. They're really good they get heavy armor and shields, and they hit hard. Their limitations range, and
yeah, you kind of compare them to a fighter, and you're like, oh, you can do everything a fighter can do, but also put out more damage, and you're a half spellcaster.
Yeah.
So, all right. I just wanted to make sure. I feel like the other ones we didn't need to do that, but I wasn't sure if there was any demands going into this. So, starting off, we do have just the lay on hands abilities. I'll skip over all of the proficiencies and such. There's really no changes to that. But lay on hands is at first level, which no change there in terms of timeline. Mm-hmm. It's a magic action now instead of an action. You can still use the 5 HP to remove the poison condition. So I actually don't think that changes anything in this case.
You can no longer use it to remove disease. It was poisoned or diseased.
Oh.
Which is actually, it's so subtle and so easy to miss. I think it's huge. Because 5 HP of a quick lay on hands thing to get rid of poison, fine. Poison is not that big. Somebody being diseased, we've talked about this before, like in monster episodes, like, somebody gets diseased with this and like it's this terrible thing that's hard to cure and get rid of, unless you have a paladin. Then it's like literally nothing to them. I love how they got rid of it. And I think later on, if I remember correctly, it comes back. They could then use it to cure diseases. They could definitely use it to cure other things. Disease may still not even be on there. So I appreciate that they did not include diseased. Otherwise, it's exactly the same. And it's a good heal. But that is another one of the things where it's like, okay, so you wear heavy armor and you're tanky and you can hit really, really hard. Okay, and you're actually a really good healer too. And lay on hands is the same.
Yeah, it's not even just like a good healing. It's so consistent, right? Because even spellcasters have that risk of, they cast a cure wounds at 3rd level and roll a 1, and a 2. It's like, oh, that was kind of not worth it. Where this, exactly how much you're expending. You've got full control over it. That has always felt really strong to me.
Right.
Actually, to the point where I could see this falling more in line if you wanted to tone that down a little bit, giving them a pool of D6s, one per level, and you just roll the D6, and that's how much HP you get back.
Yeah, there's definitely a subclass that does that.
Yeah, I
It
think
might be the warlock, the celestial warlock, maybe. It's one. It's kind of has a divine bent
there's a
to it. It's one of
couple
those.
actually. There's I think a
Yeah.
sorcerer that might have it, and then there's the
Like,
dreams druid I think has something similar. So it's been around.
yeah. Yeah, because like with lay on hands, I mean, it's so flexible and so much health. Like that scales really well 5 times your level. Like at level 10, somebody goes down, you spend your action. It's like, all right, here's 50 health points.
No, here's 49 because I want to save that one for when somebody
Oh,
else goes
right,
down and I can yo-yo them.
right.
Which it is. It's the ultimate yo-yo. Taking a whole action obviously hurts, but yeah, there's arguably too much flexibility in allowing somebody to choose how much HP they give.
Yeah.
This is the horror of lay on hands, though, is the limitation being an action matters because it's like the best way to get your paladin not to nuke your boss. It's like,
It's forcing them to use lay on hands.
not let this action happen. So I'm going to let them lean into their overpowered healing.
That is not a good solution. I hear what you're
this
saying.
This
you're
is
not
an
incorrect.
alarming hostage situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, next is though the spellcasting, and there is actually one pretty big change to the spellcasting beyond the preparation stuff that we've talked about in the other UA one that we talked about. I think the cleric one we covered it. Paladins get cantrips now.
Right.
Halfcasters generally did not get cantrips in the past. Paladins in particular felt that pain of not getting cantrips. I think there might have been a fighting style that allowed them to take like one that came out in Tasha's, but otherwise they were pretty starved for cantrips. The big reason why that is a change is less of the out of combat stuff and more of the fact that one of the big limitations in my eyes of paladins has always been their failing at range, where if anything is more than 10 feet away from them, they usually had a pretty hard time. Now they can just take Sacred Flame, and it's less damage. Sure, they're not going to be able to smite off of a ranged spell yet. I don't know. We'll see with new UAs. But it just... I don't know. I don't love that. I actually always liked that Paladins didn't get cantrips, and I don't think they needed them.
I agree. Yep. There's another thing. It's like, all right, so lay on hands didn't get nerfed enough. Spellcasting actually got buffed for them because now they get like reliable, solid ranged options and just even better support stuff. Like they can take guidance.
Yeah.
So like, oh, that's annoying.
And in addition to the flattening of removing that limitation, they now just get divine spells. There's no paladin spells.
Right.
For better or worse, the cleric spell list is the paladin spell list.
Yep. And the cleric spell list, at least for 5th edition, was always very, very powerful spell list.
Oh, this means that paladins are going to get spiritual weapon.
Wasn't it pretty nerfed in this though?
It was.
I remember talking about it.
But paladins also had generally have a very little use for their bonus action, and again, not great at range. Now they have a fantastic use for their bonus action with spiritual weapon that won't come on until they have 2nd level spells, which happens at 5th level. So, I don't know. That's something to keep in mind. But I don't love them just having access to every spell a cleric does. It seems like it is muddying the waters too much of what their distinction is, which is something I've always had an issue with paladins and always wanted to lean more into the oath side of things than the holy order side of things. And this seems to now just say, that's too hard. We're just doing the holy order stuff. So fighter, you're a fighter that loves your god, and that's it. All right, so then next we get to Divine Smite, and there are some changes here. So I'll read this one out. When you strike a target, you can channel divine energy to smite it. Immediately after you hit a target with an attack roll using a weapon or an unarmed strike, you expend 1 spell slot to deal radiant damage to the target. The damage is 2d8 for a 1st level spell slot plus 1d8 for each slot higher than 1st. You can use it no more than once during a turn, and you can't use it on the same turn that you cast a spell. So a lot of differences there. I know we usually don't do this, but I'm actually just for comparison's sake here going to read the 5th edition one shouldn't take too long. So starting at second level, when you hit a creature with a melee weapon attack, you can expend 1 spell slot to deal radiant damage to the target, in addition to the weapon's damage, 2d8 damage, then up to a maximum of 5d8. So there was a cap. And if the target was undead, it did an additional 1d8 damage.
Yeah, so now you get smite on ranged attacks.
And punches.
Yeah. Yeah, calling on unarmed. We always complain about that. And that's actually, I don't think it's that big of a change
No.
because most people just thought, anyways, but whatever. It's like, okay, they officially allow it now, so it doesn't feel stupid. The ranged attacks is a big change,
Very.
which again, I don't love, but then they did counterbalance it a bit where you can only do it once per turn. So you're not like just unloading 2 divine smites, 3 divine smites if you like polar master bonus action stuff into a creature, and also then you can't cast a spell if you do that.
Right.
It's an interesting way to limit it.
It's an interesting way to limit it. I almost feel like they need to be looked at separately, because let's just keeping in mind the once per turn aspect. I do agree. I think that's actually good, just because, like you said, it limits it. And there's way too many times where paladins are able to just nova on the first turn. You know, you take a 2-level dip into fighter, you get action surge, you do your 5 attacks, you smite on each one, you do 120 damage in the first turn, and
you do this all great weapon master, so you get plus 10 damage to so plus 50 to those 5 attacks plus the smites.
Yes, this simplifies a lot of the cheese, and I am very, very happy with that. Even though I do love my complex cheeses, this is not a good example of that.
I like the monkey's paw situation where everybody wanted to be like the monk who can smite off their punches.
Oh, right, and now you can't do it off of multiple.
Flurry of smites.
Yeah.
Not quite, buddy.
You also now you're in the same difficult position as the rogue, where you have to either decide, are you going to smite now, or are you going to wait for the crit, or are you going to miss next turn or next attack and not have the opportunity to smite afterwards. That is actually huge in balancing out the paladin, I think.
Mm-hmm. Because smite crits are crazy.
Yes,
because they do crit.
Yeah, and rogues don't have that issue. They have even, I guess, less of an issue, because at least sneak attack isn't a resource. Smites, they can only do so many per day. So
I think this is one of those things that is still up in the air, because the way they worded it does not necessarily mean they crit anymore. And
you're right, actually
leaning out of that.
You're right. So, rogue sneak attacks don't crit right now by the One D&D rules. So these might not either.
Right, I forgot about that. Immediately after you hit a target attack or using a weapon or an unarmed strike, you can expend 1 spell slot to deal radiant damage to damages.
So is this the dunk on paladins that we were looking for? Oh, that's the thumbnail and the title for you, Ellie.
Paladins ruin?
Yeah. Oh, we're so good at YouTube. Sorry for all podcast listeners who can't see our ugly ass faces. Just for those faces. Normally our faces are beautiful. So that's one side of this. The other side is now the ranged attack, which I'm on the fence with. There's something that I feel like it's antithetical to the paladin. I've always imagined the sword and board or the great weapon, like that style of play, and giving them range seems odd. Obviously that's happening with the cantrips. That's happening here as well, where it's an option. But at the same time, it does sound pretty cool. I like the idea of somebody on horseback being super far back and shooting off a bunch of smite arrows, or I guess a smite arrow.
A smite arrow, yeah.
I maybe it's because I've been playing Elden Ring recently, but it definitely gives me those vibes. That's a thing that you can achieve from that.
Or like the holy arrows from Zelda.
Yes, yep.
That's
So like it's
arrows,
cool. Yeah. It doesn't infringe on the martial so much. It opens things up. So I'm on the fence of whether or not it's too much.
And like a Dex Paladin is viable.
Right.
Give them a long bow. then smiting from like it sounds cool. Like I like the flavor of it. I can't. Yeah, I'm struggling to land on if like I'm okay with the balance because it goes back to something we talked about in our Pathfinder episode and links at the top about how it feels like there should be a penalty to being in range because you're like in range, you're just inherently in a safer place, and so you should be probably doing less damage than those in melee. And the paladin kind of had that balance because they had no chance of smiting, and now that's taken away. And now they could also smite just as if they were up in melee. And it actually, I would say, make like the idea of like a dex paladin in the back a lot more viable.
So this is there was some hints in a recent interview that the weapons are getting a pass. Maybe next UA, they're getting some kind of look at maybe change. The only distinction they said was like a scimitar was going to be different than a short sword. I don't know what's going to happen with bows. My instinct, having seen these UAs, is nothing, but we don't know that yet. So you're right. No, I hope there are those limitations added. I think this would be less egregious if there were, but I don't know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, though, to keep in mind is that you can still have heavy armor too. So now you are not only great at range or have the ability to be great at range, but you can also be still just as tanky at range.
Did they take away strength requirements for heavy armor? Or are you saying just ignore the speed hit?
You could. This is actually going to be really easy to ignore the speed hit once we talk about 5th level stuff. But yes, there's, as far as I know, still the strength requirement of needing. Is it 15?
Well,
15,
I don't think there is. I don't know. They haven't said yet. That's still up in the air.
Okay.
All right, so then we get the fighting style options. So we don't see all of the fighting styles. For now, we can only assume the ones from the player's handbook are viable. And it says you get the ones of your choice. What is it? Either defense, which is just +1 to your AC, or you gain another fighting style feat of your choice. So we could assume that archery's on that list. We could assume that really any of the ones that fighters can get are up for grabs. I don't think that changes a ton, besides the fact that paladins before could not get archery. So we're seeing that opened up as a viable option even more so. They could also get 2-weapon fighting now, which I guess doesn't matter because, again, they can't smite off of multiple attacks. So overall, we're seeing the smiting once per turn is allowing them to I guess be more creative, or allowing players to be more creative with their builds, because there's no longer this like terrifying like, oh, but what if you smite 16 times in a turn?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Then we get to the Channel Divinity, their 3rd level ability. This was a 2nd level. Was there really a Channel Divinity? I guess not. It was in the subclasses before, so now it is actually a base class thing in the Channel Divinity. So
No, you got Channel Divinity. It was at level 1. It also allows you to channel
Divine
energy
Sense
to
and Lay
feel
on Hands. That's all I'm seeing.
When you use your Channel Divinity, you choose which option to use. You must have finished. Oh, you're right. It doesn't actually call out what it is.
Yeah.
It just like it lists it right away, level 1 in the player handbook. Channel Divinity, but then there's no options. You're right. It's just from your class.
Okay, perfect. All right,
Okay.
so now it is a base level thing, which I guess just makes more sense from as you just said, it's kind of confusing to call it out in the base class, but to give it in the subclass.
Yeah.
So you, same thing as the druid, where you get 2 uses and then you get 1 back on a short rest. You get all on a long rest back. You can get additional uses for certain paladin levels, as shown in the table somewhere else. So the one that you get right away is Divine Sense, which is, as a bonus action, you open your awareness to detect celestials, fiends, and undead for the next 10 minutes, or until you have the incapacitated condition. You know the location of any creature of those types within 60 feet of yourself. You know the creature type. And within the same radius, you also detect the presence of any place or object that has been consecrated or desecrated, as with the Hallow spell. This sucked before, it sucks now.
Yeah.
No, it's not nearly as bad. It's not nearly as bad.
Because it lasts for 10 minutes now instead of just being a ping.
It lasts for 10 minutes, and it's also, it is a radar, like you can detect things behind things. The old Divine Sense was like, you had to be staring at something and be like, is this dude actually a vampire? Which is not useful.
Yeah, you're right. This is actually made a little bit better. It does change.
But now it's not free.
Yes, I say before it was 1 plus your charisma modifier per long rest. Now it's your channel divinity. I think we're going to see more uses for channel divinity in the paladin subclass when we get to that. So I'm glad it's better. I still don't think it's going to get a ton of use, but at least when it's useful, it feels useful now.
It was also a thing that was always very thematic for the paladin, somebody who could sniff out evil, but it was so bad that they couldn't really lean into it. So I'm glad it exists.
Yeah, I think it's a holdover from older editions where alignment meant a lot more and it was more heavily enforced. Because I mean, I'm fairly certain the Paladins would have a version like to tell if something is evil.
Right.
That, if that was still heavily enforced, could be useful. I like that it's not. I don't like the alignment system and don't want to see it come back, so that's not what I'm saying. But I'm just think they should have just got rid of Divine Sense altogether and replaced it with something else instead of trying to make it work with like, oh, one of these monster types, as opposed to like, is this person evil?
Yeah, I'll agree with that. So mixed feelings on Divine Sense. It's better, still not great. 3rd level, they get their subclass. 4th level, they get a feat. 5th level, they get extra attack. So no changes there. But also at 5th level now, we get Faithful Steed. You can easily call in the aid of an otherworldly steed. You always have the Find Steed spell prepared, and it doesn't count against the number of spells you can prepare. When you cast the spell, its casting time is an action. You can also cast the spell once without expending a spell slot, and you regain the ability to do so when you finish a long rest.
I hate it. I just hate it. Like Find Steed is a fine spell, and I like that it exists as an option for someone to pick. I don't like how it is a core 5th level. Like 5th level is a big power jump in D&D feature for the paladin because like that's a really specific archetype and mental image of who your character is of riding around on this grand steed. And there's like I've played paladins that don't do that. It doesn't fit them. They're not going to have a steed, and it's also really situational because like within dungeons they don't really have much use in cramped spaces. I always have to figure out what to do with the steed. And like you could say like, oh, then just don't use it. But like I mean, it's a core 5th level feature of the class where like it does feel like you're like really taking a hit balance wise. Like it's balanced around you having this fine steed. It's like, well, I don't want that. It's like, well, that's what paladins are now, buddy. It's like you ride around on a plated horse armor, smiting things, and like that's just who you are. You're basically a holy knight. You have no other options. Obviously, that's overstating it, but
Right. But for the amount that they've done in other spots here, as we've just been talking about, opening it up to different mental images of a paladin, you now have something that goes the opposite direction that says, oh, actually, all of those other things aren't really what we had in mind. So now we're using Faithful Steed to kind of lock you into what we did have in mind. So it's not a great way to handle it.
yeah,
I'm a big fan of horse archers. Not in D&D, like in
Just
real
as
life.
a concept, yeah.
But it's there now.
Yeah.
It's a weird. This is a weird thing to lean into, and I don't think anyone saw it coming. Like,
No.
why? We agree. It's like Find Steed's fine. You know, it's a thing you can do with your character, but as a default for the paladin.
And you know what I do want to see though is better subclasses from the paladin. We've talked about this before where the subclasses just don't feel good. And this is a time where you can lean into that and say, hey, this is the holy knight ideal. You know, this is the oath of you have a horse. And then you can base the entire subclass around it. And you can now actually make that part of the flavor and make it feel like, yes, this is the specific idea I had in mind and I chose this. Whereas making it part of the base class doesn't give you that feeling at all. So yeah, I think that's the way to handle it. And I'm not seeing that from the subclasses. I'm seeing them go the exact same route, make the exact same mistake with subclasses that makes me pull away from paladins as much as I love the concept. I just really only love Oath of Devotion. To talk about the spell really quick, Find Steed, there are some changes as we now have a stat block to it. So you're going to have if you're using your free version of it that you get at 5th level, you get, actually it's kind of confusing because it says 1 per spell level and it's a 2nd level spell. So I'm assuming anytime it says that, you should just make it a 2. So like its armor
Mhm.
class is going to be 12. Its hit points are going to be 25 unless you're upcasting it. Its speed is going to be 60, which is really the main reason to have a horse
Yeah.
here. That's great movement for a paladin. Otherwise, they're slow. So, hey, you got an issue, paladin? We'll solve it. We're WotC. That's what we do. It has this
Remove
life
barriers
bond.
for the paladins.
Yeah, it has this life bond ability. When you regain HP from a spell of first level or higher, the steed regains the same number of HP if you're within 5 feet of it. So I guess it doesn't have a huge hit point pool to add to, but that's still a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Otherworldly Maul, so it can make an attack and you can choose based on if it's celestial, fey, or fiend what type of damage it does, either radiant, psychic, or necrotic. Otherwise, it's 1d8 plus the spell's level of radiant of damage. So I guess and when you're mounted, it doesn't just get a free attack, right? Mounting rules are so confusing.
They're also
Hopefully
not.
there's a UA for that.
I don't think they have addressed it yet, have they?
No, they haven't. I
I
kind
don't
of
think
expected
so.
it with this, but I guess not. So I believe if you're mounted, it doesn't get its own action. But if you're not mounted, then it can attack, basically. But if
Yeah,
somebody's
or
looking
if
that
you
up,
mount it and it's an intelligent creature and you give it control, then you don't get to control its movement and the DM does and it attack. Yeah, it's
super messy.
a mess.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, actually, maybe that is in here. Combat. The steed is an ally to you and your companions. In combat, it shares your initiative count, and it functions as a controlled mount, as defined in the rules on mounted combat. Okay, never mind. Not helpful.
Well, no, that is helpful. The control mount is the easy one. It does not get its own attack. You can, it's your action. Like you share its movement, and it's an action to command it to do things, or you do your own stuff.
Okay.
It does not act on its own.
Okay. So then
That's a controlled mount.
So then for these bonus actions, does that mean that it can just do them, or you have to command it to take one of its bonus actions?
I don't know, man.
All right. Then for now, let's just go through
It's
them.
really not clear.
Yeah, so we've got Fey Step if it's a Fey one, Fell Glare if it's Fiend, and Healing Touch if it's Celestial. For Fey Step, the steed teleports along with its rider to an unoccupied space of your choice up to 60 feet away. So you've already got 60-foot movement speed, and now you're adding another 60 feet on top of it. Teleportation at that, so now you've got the verticality to it. Very, very strong.
Mm-hmm.
Faster than a monk. Obviously, paladins need to be faster than monks. They also need to be faster than rogues. Obviously, they just...
Right. Oh, yeah, of course.
Then we've got Fell Glare. The steed's eyes gleam with fiendish light as it targets one creature up to 60 feet away. The target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC or have the frightened condition until the end of your next turn. That's not as strong.
No.
I don't really like the frightened condition in general, though. Then we have Healing Touch for the Celestial. I'm sorry, I should mention, these are all once per long rest abilities. So that's
okay. So that's not too
important to note. So then we got the Steed touches another creature and restores a number of hit points to it equal to 2d8 plus the spell's level. I like the image of that, where the Steed just runs up and nuzzles somebody and heals them. It's cute.
Sure. Once per long rest makes me not actually feel that strongly about those, and I would probably handle it like, yeah, it takes the paladin's action to command it to do this. So
that's probably fair, but can they attack as well as take their bonus action then? So you take your action?
I do not think so. If you are mounted on it, no.
Somebody please go into too much detail on the mounted combat rules in the comments. I'm sure one of you understands them better than we do. There's a reason we don't. It's because we dislike them. And that's how you run a podcast. You ignore them.
And the good news is now they're not optional.
Yeah.
Right.
So everyone's going to learn them. Hey, does everyone remember the fighting underwater features or rules? No? Okay, we're going to make them part of the Ranger. Shut up, Ellie.
I got him in here.
I don't need your encyclopedic knowledge right now. I need to prove a point.
All right. No, mounted though. No, I got those down. Mounted, no. Not even a little bit.
Perfect. All right, so that's Fine Steed. As I said, part of the class now. Obviously, you could keep casting it to expending a second level spell slot or higher if you want it to be a little bit beefier. 6th level, you get a subclass feature. So this changes because before you'd get Aura of Protection at 6th level. Now it is at 7th level. So the aura of protection remains the same. It's 10 feet, doesn't go through cover, but you and your allies in the aura gain a bonus to saving throws equal to your charisma modifier, minimum of 1. And then it just specifies if another paladin's present, you don't stack those, which makes sense, and it's just clarifying it. I like this being moved to 7th. This is always a really strong thing. 6 is, I don't know, it's not a huge change, but it's just a little balance tweak.
Sure. Yeah, it's a really good ability. It's solid in 5th. I don't see it being that big a difference to move from 6 to 7. It's kind of whatever. This is one where it's borderline, where also just in comparison to everything else the paladins have and can do, it feels really, really strong. And it has in 5th edition of the player handbook, and it still does here.
Yeah.
Those are big boosts to saving throws. I mean, it is not that crazy to kind of put a big focus on getting your charisma up, and like a +4 to every saving throw is a very big deal. There's a 20% chance extra of succeeding.
I think the funniest part is that they had to add that last paragraph, if another paladin is present. Because, like, in the old one, you could bring a table of paladins and they'd all have +20 to their saving throws.
Is that even true? Because just based on the whole, if you're under an effect of one thing, you can't be under an effect by the same name. I mean, you really had to choose one, didn't you?
It was never clear.
Okay.
But now it is.
Yes.
Now you can't bring 5 paladins to the table and ruin the DM's life.
Yeah, that's for the best. Great. So then 8th level, you get another ASI or feat. And then 9th level, there's Abjure Foes, which is a new thing. So as a magic action, you can expend 1 use of your channel divinity to overwhelm foes with divine awe. As you present your holy symbol or weapon, you can target a number of creatures equal to your charisma modifier that you can see within 60 feet of yourself. Each target must make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, the target has the dazed and frightened conditions for 1 minute or until it takes any damage. On a successful save, the target has the dazed condition for 1 minute or until it takes any damage.
Dazed being you have limited activity, you can move or take 1 action on your turn, not both. You also can't take a bonus action or a reaction. It's kind of like slowed.
Yeah. It kind of feels...
It's actually really solid.
Yeah, it feels pretty strong.
Because, that's what we've been saying the paladin needs this whole time.
Yeah. I mean, going on to, once again, just like what a paladin's biggest weaknesses are, usually it's fast monsters that can, back away from them, that have ranged abilities that a paladin can't catch up to. This is now completely disabling them regardless of how good their wisdom saving throw is. I hate to continue bringing up Pathfinder 2nd edition, but this does seem like a time where we need if they want this, which I think it's too strong as a base, but if they want something like this, it needs to be a, critical success means they have absolutely nothing to happen to them. A success means they're just dazed. A fail means that they're dazed and frightened, and a critical failure means that they're dazed and frightened, and I don't know, it's the paladin, so they instantly turn into dust. Something balanced for Wizards of the Coast.
I was going to say, this is also like, if they fail, they're dazed and frightened. If they pass, they're still dazed for a minute.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's
a guarantee.
Too much. Right. Especially when you can use that on a boss and they use their legendary resistance and you say, you're still dazed for a minute. So now we can daze any single creature and make them, as you said,
immune,
it's right. That isn't immune, which maybe that's how it's balanced, things are immune to daze very frequently if they're considered powerful. But yeah, I don't think that D&D works well with if you succeed, bad things still happens.
Yeah, I mean, it ends if you take damage.
True.
So it's not great for just one enemy. But
action economy.
Other than that, it's really awesome. Yeah.
It's like a weird mindset to go into it with. Like, I was worried the paladin might not feel like the main character for one turn.
Yeah. Someone over at WotC really loves paladins and
clerics.
Paladins and clerics.
Well, all right. So 10th level, we get another subclass feature. We'll get into that later. 11th level, we get Radiant Strikes. So you're so suffused with Divine Might that your weapon strikes carry supernatural power with them. When you hit a target with an attack roll using a simple or martial weapon, the target takes an extra 1d8 radiant damage.
So this is same as what's in the player handbook at 11th. No difference. It feels good when you're the paladin, but I could also, again, I sound like a broken record, but it just feels too much in comparison to everything else. If you could take away half of what the paladin gets, I feel like these stuff would start to feel better, more in line.
Yeah, I really feel like this Radiant Strike should be like once per turn too. I mean, it still feels too strong when you're able to try and get that third attack out or something. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't think that's in line with everything else that has changed here. Because now, like, a dual wielding
Oh, and
paladin is pretty darn great, or that, I guess, monk paladin. If you want to say that's great, you can. It's not, but it would really benefit from this.
also this now works with range. The other one also
Yes.
said melee attack. This one does not.
Yeah, which I mean is in line with everything else, so that's
Yeah.
fine. All right. 13th levels. Next important thing, you get Aura of Courage. You and your allies are immune to the frightened condition while in the Aura of Protection. If a frightened ally enters the aura, their condition is suppressed while the ally is there. I don't think this changed
It's fine.
much. It's just not really
3
interesting.
levels later. It was 10th in the player handbook.
Yeah,
Other than that, it's the same. It's whatever. It's fine.
it's fine. I just hate.
I don't want them to see. I don't want them to get anything else stronger.
Right. How much is that 13th level? You get nothing. Great. Then at 15th level, we get Restoring Touch. So when you use Lay on Hands, you can remove one or more of the following conditions from the creature: blinded, charmed, dazed, deafened, frightened, paralyzed, or stunned. You must expend 5 hit points from the Lay on Hands pool for each condition removed. And those don't restore HP.
They buffed it.
I think this is a
kinda. I
healthy
guess-
change. So before it was
Right, the
you
cleansing
end
touch.
you end one spell you end one spell on yourself or one willing creature that you touch, and it was a feature number of times equal to your charisma modifier you regain on a long rest. So it's buffed in the
You're right,
sense
this
that it
is-
has more use. And it is also in line
Yeah.
with how they're removing spells from monsters more and more.
Mm-hmm.
If they left it as it was, this would have really never gotten use. And now it at least uses the same resource as Lay on Hands, making that less spammable because you might actually want to keep it around to remove some of these. And if you have something like the Abjure Foes, which adds dazed and frightened, you're now having to spend 10 to get rid of that instead of just 5 that completely removes it.
Right.
So I think this is a healthy switch, and it is at 15th instead of 14th. Not a big change, but
Yeah. Okay.
17th level, we get Aura expansion. This used to be 18th, but it just extends the aura to 30 feet instead of 10. I guess, yeah, no comments on that. Just, still. It's still good.
It's the same.
Yep.
Yep, it's still really good.
18th level is their capstone, Divine Conduit. Whenever you roll initiative, you regain 1 use of the class's channel divinity. So I think that's, as we kind of talked about with the druid, Ellie, you've got issues with the rolling initiative aspect of that, but this at least almost all channel divinity uses are in combat.
Yeah. It feels less like a weirdness there, but
Yeah.
So yeah, we recently did the Paladin retro, and we definitely talked about it. And you brought some at the beginning, the complaints of the Paladin core class is so good that the subclasses feel kind of weak and they don't add much flavor. And I think that issue is still here. And also Paladins in general are just still really strong. And I would like, especially as we are seeing like power levels and toys taken away from other classes in these UAs, Paladin staying the same or even honestly a bit stronger feels so like such a weird design choice. I think I'm not saying there's like it's broken and overpowered or anything because like I mean the DM can work to counter them, but that's kind of annoying to have to do. And then there could be this kind of weird discrepancy between the paladin and the other players, which may not feel great. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that Wizards of the Coast needs to choose something paladins are bad at. And I think that's where this falls short. Is I can look at just about any other class and be like, this is where they fail. I just still don't really see that with Paladin. And what we can't really quantify as easily by just looking at the skills on the base class is how much opens up from them getting cleric spells. That really does change so much that their base class gets this huge boost to it, as clerics have always been considered one of the better casters. I mean, they get a lot of good options. They're preparation casters, so they have access to everything. It's not enough just to take away smiting on every attack. That is one piece of the puzzle here. And I'm glad that they recognize the Nova as an issue, but I don't feel like any other issues were addressed here.
Right.
I'm glad they reiterated.
If anything, they were added.
The one thing the DM can do to stop a paladin, and if they catch them doing something not so oathy, they can make them just stop being paladin. All right, reroll your character. I'm sick of this.
The breaking your oath.
Yeah, it's good that they put that, because it does say at the DM's discretion. So, if you really, really just hate that paladin, you'd be like, actually ruining my encounters is against your oath.
I thought you were devoted to having fun. We're not having fun anymore. You're a warlock now.
Yeah. Not really the freedom it gives you, but I like your thought process.
And that actually exact same little sidebar box is also in the player
I'm glad
handbook.
it stayed there because the DM needs that power. This is the one class where you need to be able to say no.
All right, so enough about the base class. We now have the Oath of Devotion on our list here. So the Oath of Devotion has always been kind of the base paladin in my mind. So the binds a paladin to the loftiest ideals of justice and order. They are the knight in shining armor trope through and through. And their changes are, well, there are definitely some changes here. They get some devotion spells. That much isn't new, nor really worth talking about what's different there. But at 3rd level, their channel divinity sacred weapon gets a pretty major change. And that is moving it from a action to start off to a bonus action, which sacred weapon is just for 1 minute. You can add your charisma modifier to attack rolls, and each time you hit with it, you cause it to deal the normal damage type or radiant damage. That I think is also a change to doing radiant damage if you choose now. Weapon also emits bright light, 20 feet, dim light, 20 feet beyond that, and you can end it as a bonus action, though I don't know why you would. It also ends if you drop the weapon or if you have the incapacitated condition.
So, I mean, really the only change is making it a bonus action, which from a design philosophy, I like. That feels much
Other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln? That is so big. I mean, this was, I played an Oath of Devotion, and it was really hard to justify ever using sacred weapon because it was such a massive thing to use up your entire action to get this bonus that may or may not pay off, because if the fight ends in 3 rounds, it was a waste of time. If your attacks were going to hit anyways, it was a waste of time. So making this a bonus action is, yes, it does feel better. You're totally right, but it is a really big boost.
Right. What I was going to say is, like, I like the design philosophy of it. We've talked about it a million times over and over. Every time it comes up on the show, having to like use your entire action to set up better next turns in 5th edition D&D does not feel good. I have a feeling it's going to be the same in One D&D because they seem to be getting rid of that. So that's great. That is more fun. But on the other hand, is also another boost to this paladin that does not need it.
Being able to do magical damage at 3rd level is by itself pretty good. And let me just actually make sure it didn't make it
a plus 3 to 4 to hit.
Yeah, okay. I was checking to see.
The previous one? No, you couldn't do radiant.
But it did make it magical, so that is not a change.
I think there's some belief that the magical, non-magical distinctions kind of going away.
That seems fitting, actually. I think I have seen that kind of taken out. All right, so then next at 6th level, we get Smite of Protection. Your Divine Smite now radiates positive energy that allows you and your allies to stay in the fight. Whenever you use Divine Smite, choose yourself or an ally within 30 feet of yourself. The chosen creature gains temp HP equal to 1d8 plus the level of the spell slot used for the Divine Smite.
Another awesome ability. Like,
Yes, but
I'm getting sick of saying it. It's
it at least is now a very good sign of something I've been asking for a while now when we do our retros, and that is taking a core class ability and using subclasses to augment it.
yes.
So this is going to
Definitely.
allow paladins to feel more unique from a subclass perspective.
Mm-hmm. I do like that design philosophy.
So
1d8 plus
far, sorry, go ahead.
I say 1d8 plus the level of the spell slot used for Divine Smite, though, that's a lot of temp HP for just like a free thing that happens that you'd be doing frequently anyways.
I mean, it's an alright amount. There's better ways to get more, I guess. I would have to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
All right, so then next we have the Aura of Devotion. You and your allies are immune to the charm condition while in the Aura of Protection. If a charmed ally enters, the condition is suppressed while within there. I think that's no
Same,
change
yeah.
besides it was at 7th level before, and now it's at 10th. That's just a change of how the subclasses progress.
Mm-hmm.
Then at 14th level, we have Holy Nimbus. As a bonus action, you can imbue your Aura of Protection with Holy Power. The Aura gains the following benefits for 1 minute or until you end them as a bonus action. Radiant damage. Whenever an enemy starts its turn in the Aura, the creature takes radiant damage equal to your proficiency bonus plus your charisma modifier. And then Sunlight. The Aura is filled with bright light that is sunlight. Once you use this feature, you can't do it again until you take a long rest or expend a spell slot of at least 4th level to use it again.
The automatic damage is nice. And that's right around when it bumps up to 30 feet, right?
No,
When does that
actually,
happen now?
that's
Oh, that happens
it's
at
17th.
Okay.
So you got to wait a little bit on that.
Yeah.
I mean,
The
really, this
sunlight's
is
really situational. It depends what you're fighting.
yeah, this is arguably the capstone from the perspective of most Wizards of the Coast adventures end around 14th level.
And interestingly, they
it-
did just kind of rip the capstone out of these. And it's something I think we've mentioned, but I'm glad to see the subclass defining features moved from 20th level to 14th.
Yeah, that's a big change. Okay, yeah, Paladins, the base Paladin doesn't actually get a level 20 capstone in its core. It's just
And
a
those are all
subclass.
dope. We've always said that. We like our hatred of the subclasses of Paladin is that they don't really get much until that. Now it's hey, 14th level is actually a good place to put that. Especially with some, I'm assuming they're going to port basically all the other ones as is, and those are just like ridiculous and dope in their own ways.
Yeah, so I'm fine with that. Honestly, from everything we've talked about, I have no issues with this subclass. I think the subclass, this design philosophy that they have going on with this, all very healthy for the Paladin. It's just putting it to the base class Paladin is like, it's egregious. It is too much.
Yeah. Yeah, and compared to what we're seeing for the other classes and that are coming out in this One D&D
Right.
stuff, it just doesn't line up.
Like at 14th level, what did the Druid get? Alter Self as for free.
Right.
And now we're seeing 10 at least probably radiant damage to every creature of your choice, because it's enemies when an enemy starts his turn in the aura within 10 feet of you. So it's a very big difference.
Mm-hmm.
They made it a bonus action too. Damn.
Yeah, so it was an action
Yeah.
before, right? Which once again just it lines up better with how a turn should play out, but oh man, it's adding a lot of power, just a lot of power.
Yeah. And it's not a spell, so you can do that as a bonus action. Hit, smite, keep it in.
That's a good point. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see the as you mentioned with the divine smite, you can not cast a spell on the same turn as you divine smite. So I'm curious to see how that'll feel, just because as a paladin, I didn't cast that many spells in combat, and I don't know if that's going to
Yeah.
change really with this.
Yes, because they changed smites.
Aha, that actually is a good point. And probably a good segue too into some of the new spells here. They did add the smites. They changed the smites, and overall, they are more alterations to the regular smite than they are full on spells like they used to be. So it used to be that you would cast a bonus action, and on your next hit, you would be able to do whatever the smite spell was. Now it is casting time of a bonus action, which you take immediately after hitting a creature with a weapon or an unarmed strike.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, these were also
Concentration?
yes,
Yes, they were.
which is rough.
Yes, it meant that you couldn't cast other spells, for one, and it also meant that if you missed your attack, then you were hoping to maintain concentration until next turn to get it off.
Right. Yeah, in terms of the effects, as far as I can tell, there's nothing too different.
No, not really. I mean, Banishing Smite has the same changes that Banishment does, which is that the target gets a save at the end of each of its turns to try and break the banishment. Healthy change, love it. Even though it's 5th level, that still just feels correct.
Mhm.
I don't know if there's any change to Blinding Smite. I don't think so. So yeah, I think in general the smites really do feel the same, but I think they're going to see more use. It always felt like you were just better off to just smite
Use
normally
divine.
and
Yeah.
use whatever level you had. I really like that there now feels like a reason to use these.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Again, it's a good like design change to feel better at the table, but it's also still a boost to the
Those
the
darn
spell.
paladins, they can't keep getting away with this. Anything else?
I think that's a wrap on this episode.
Okay, the only thing that it's not a wrap on is our sponsor for the episode, which is... Choose one, Ellie. Choose one.
Fan roll again.
Oh, it's just Fanroll again. Fanroll. Buy dice from Fanroll. They got dice. Did this one come from Fanroll? I don't think so. I don't think it did. I just had a die in my hand. Which one? This came from Fanroll. Ooh, metal dice, not in focus. That's what you want to see. That's what you're here for. That's what you're here for. And you can save 10% off by using the code MM10 on your order. And it's wonderful. Free shipping on $50. You'll hit it easily if you're addicted to dice, like I am. Not the best one. Thank you as always to our patrons: Ed G, Cameron C, Brian H, Craig A, Isaac M, Luca L, Jeff W, Star Shinobi, Vincent M, Muddleweight, Bob F, Joe P, Rick D, Sensible D20, Tyler S, Gray, Barons, Adam A, and Rob K. I do not say that off of memory. I have a list. You can see my eyes. It's very, very clear. Thank you, as always, for your continued patronage. And if you wish to do so, you can head on over to monstermulticlass.com/support, where you can find our other affiliates as well as our Patreon, with which will give you early access to episodes most of the time, show notes, and other things as it comes up. Like, comment, subscribe. I already said that, but I'll say it again.
Cool. As always, thanks for watching.